If I could turn the clock back, 90 years to the establishment of my party and choose its name all over again, I wouldn't choose the name it's got just now. I would call it something other than the Scottish National Party. Now, people say, why don't you change its name now? And it's like, well, that would be far too complicated because, what those of us who do support Scottish independence are all about could not be further removed from some of what you would recognise as nationalism in other parts of the world. I mean, I believe, for example, two things that I believe that I think run so strongly through the Scottish independence movement are firstly, that it doesn't matter where you come from. If Scotland is your home and you live here and you feel you have a stake in the country, you are Scottish and you have as much say over the future of the country as I do. And that is a civic, open, inclusive view of the world that is so far removed from what you would rightly fear. But secondly, one of the great motivators for those of us who support Scottish independence is wanting to have a bigger voice in the world. It's about being outward-looking and internationalist, not inward-looking and insular. So the word is hugely problematic sometimes for those of us who, Scottish independence is about self-government. It's about running your own affairs and making your own mark in the world. Words do matter.
My goodness, the Scottish National Party sounds very progressive, doesn't it? Proud internationalist Europeans. Is the SNP? We're not like other nationalist parties because we're internationalists. We're actually not really for Scotland at all. We don't really want Scotland to become independent. We want Scotland to be a part of the European Union, just not part of the United Kingdom. And if you listen to Sturgeon's arguments in that regard, they are exactly the same arguments that Brexiteers make about Britain and Europe. Precisely. But the thing is, the Brexiteers aren't really very progressive. They're actually those small-minded types who genuinely think that we should have self-government rather than government from Europe. But anyway, none of that matters, because like I said, the SNP is highly progressive. I mean, Nicola Sturgeon has been pushing for gender balance on public sector boards for years. She's done it in her government. She's going to do it in the civil service and all of the other associated institutions. 50-50, you bigots. Women are 50% of Scotland, and vaginas can only be represented by vaginas. Now, this is something that has been very difficult for women to understand, because for some reason, they keep voting for men. Even Scottish women vote for men, and you would think they'd be the freest vaginas in the world, the most liberated ones, because have you met Scottish women? That when I mean that in a positive way too, by the way. I like feisty women. But what I'm saying is, they've got this strange habit of voting for men. They should be voting cunt. Cunt 2020 is Nicola Sturgeon's next, probably not 2020, I don't know when the next Scottish elections are. But that's the slogan. Vote vag. Vag for the win, you see, right? Because if you don't, you're actually a bigot, and the Scottish government is going to put that on a fucking poster and then get your tax money and use that to propagandize you from a bus station or a train station or just an advert on a billboard as you're driving by. Dear bigots. Right? You know they're talking to you, right? You know who they're talking to when they say dear bigots. They mean you, because you don't agree with a poster called Dear Bigots, even if you think that maybe the government shouldn't be attacking segments of its population for their opinions. Well, you're wrong, okay? That means you are the bigot that they are trying to talk to. Dear bigots, division seems to be what you believe in. We want independence, by the way, but division seems to be what you believe in. We don't want your religious hate on our buses. Oof, jihadis feeling personally attacked. On our streets, jihadis, Islamists. They're not all jihadis, you know. On our streets and in our communities. We don't want you spreading your intolerance. Well, that's very tolerant. Or making people's lives a misery because of their religious dress. Well, honestly, I'm feeling like I'm being attacked here. So you're making my life a misery, and I don't even live in Scotland. Have you considered not doing this? You may not have faith and respect and love, but we do. Except for you. That's why if we hear or see your hate, we're reporting you. End of sermon. Hate crime, report it to stop it. That's right. Dob your fellow countrymen in to Big Brother for having opinions. That's what this is. How dare you? Now, this was part of an advertising campaign. Have they got the pictures in this one? No, they don't. But there were a whole host of these. It was dear bigots, dear transphobes, dear Islamophobes, dear this, dear that. Unbelievable. Progressive propaganda paid for by the Scottish taxpayer to make them more progressive. Unsurprisingly, there was some backlash to this because Scotland is still quite a religious place, and you know, when you have a sign saying "Dear homophobes" in a country that is populated by people who also follow Abrahamic religions, that's a fair slice of the population you're actually targeting there. But it's okay, because Nicola Sturgeon is going to set up a social justice commission. What could possibly go wrong? What could your objection to social justice be? Social justice for Scottish people and literally anyone else who even visits Scotland, I imagine, with the eye to not really having a Scottish nation anymore, but becoming part of the EU and that kind of international European identity. That's what we want. I mean, we wouldn't call it the Scottish National Party now. That is problematic. This was back in April this year, where the First Minister had announced a Social Justice and Fairness Commission after she was overruled on setting up a new Scottish currency if Scotland ever became independent. She said that she wants to end poverty, deliver full employment, and said that the proceeds of economic growth could be shared much more fairly. All of this is what independence is for. Communism. She wants fucking communism for your country, just so you know. I mean, don't worry about the fact that since the Brexit referendum, you have unbelievably low unemployment. Your wages are going up. That doesn't matter. The fact that that would be the fulfilling of what she's asking for here, don't worry about that, right? Because there will still be inequality. There will still be rich. There will still be what we consider poor in comparison to the rich. This will obviously look mega wealthy when compared to somewhere like India or Indonesia or something. But, you know, relatively speaking, they'll be poor by Scottish standards. And that's not fair, is it? It's not fair that someone else has more than another person. It's just not fair. And so what they need is a commission for social justice. It won't get taken over by radical leftists. I mean, it was proposed by a radical leftist. It won't get taken over by them, but it won't be a vehicle for communism in Scotland. I'm sure you'll be just fine. Naturally, the SNP is a politically correct party, so if you've ever said something at some point that may be considered by the new standards of today deeply offensive, you're going to have to apologise. You're going to have to say, oh God, I am so sorry that historically we didn't live in a politically correct dystopia, and so I was allowed to say things that didn't ruin my life, and now the situation has changed and there's no statute of limitations on how far back we're going to go before we brand someone as unorthodox, heretical, problematic. Well, I mean, you're just kind of fucked, right? But this Gillian Martin, she didn't even apologise, so Sturgeon, boom, got her. That's it. You're out. You're fucking out. You said something about trannies. How dare you? 10 years ago, you passed comment on trannies, and it wasn't even positive. So, fuck you. The SNP is going to take action to improve trans and intersex equality, you see. We're very progressive in the SNP. Transgender children in every home. That's the plan. You think I'm joking, but let me finish. There is actually a backlash within the SNP about this transgender nonsense, because not everyone in the SNP is a communist yet. Senior nationalist politicians published an open letter in The Scotsman challenging Nicola Sturgeon's vow to push forward reforms to gender recognition laws for transgender people in Scotland, because not everyone wants their children to be indoctrinated into transgender ideology. But, I mean, we can get around that if we actually have it so that, I mean, normally these decisions are made by the parents, because the parents own the children. They're your children. That's how we view it. But have we considered having it so that there's a bureaucrat overseeing your familial relationship with your children, appointed by the SNP. So you know they're going to be very progressive, and they can actually look after your child for you, or at least keep tabs on how you do it. I mean, it does sound tremendously Orwellian, but that's just by the by. I mean, we're creating a better and more progressive nation here. More inclusive, more open. Stop being a bigot. Did you not see the bus sign? What is the named person scheme? Oh, that's how they're going to do it. What is the named person scheme? Well, that's the name of the bureaucrat that is going to monitor your family on behalf of the Scottish government to make sure you are raising your children in a progressive enough way. In the vast majority of cases, the named person would be a midwife, a health visitor, a head teacher, a deputy head teacher, or a guidance teacher, depending on the age of the child. Other organisations, such as independent or grant-aided schools and the Scottish Prison Service for young people held in custody, will also have legal requirement to make a named person available to the child. The Scottish Government says that children and families are likely to see little difference, with the legislation merely formalising the role that these professionals already have. Really, I think that formalising it gives it more authority, doesn't it? Because if a teacher says, oh, I'm concerned about how Jimmy's being treated at home, then that's something that can be investigated by the police. People who actually have a mandate to investigate this kind of thing, not just be a government spy on the bloody family. Because this is actually something that's really fucking creepy, right? I don't want the government appointing, a bureaucrat to listen, advise, and help my child and my family. I don't need that. I can't imagine that Scottish people feel they need that either. I imagine the Scots are like, I have kids. This is being done to safeguard the child's welfare and would be done in discussion with the child and their parents, unless there was a child protection concern. Like the kid one day saying, I'm a girl, before saying I'm a fire truck. And the health visitor go, oh, well, your kid's trans. Sorry, no. Chop, chop. And the parents being like, well, hang on a second. I think you might be moving a little swiftly there. No, this is for the child's concern. Sorry. Chop, chop, chop. There was even an anti-campaign group to this called No to Named Persons Campaign, which described the named person scheme as the most calamitous scheme the Scottish government has ever dreamed up. Well, that's only because it's obviously going to be used to tyrannise the people and their families. I mean, that's not the SNP's problem. How many children collectively do the SNP actually have? That's what you want to ask yourself. I'm just saying, right? Because the named person scheme will undermine parents and permit the state unlimited access to pry into the privacy of families and their homes. Well, have you got something to hide, you bigots? Do you? And there are lots of other reasons, but fundamentally, responsibility for monitoring a child's well-being should be the role of the parent, not the state. Yes. But that's only if you believe in not being a dystopian totalitarian country. That's only if you hold the opinion that maybe liberty from state interference is a good thing. And I don't think you've been paying attention to what Nicola Sturgeon has said. She's progressive, she's open, she's not a nationalist. That means caring about, the Scottish. Ew. How gross is that? What the hell's wrong with the SNP? They are actually so fucking bad that they are pushing the Scots to be pro-union. They are making Scottish people say, you know what? Independence looks kind of shitty if it's independence under people like the SNP. And I don't blame you. I really fucking don't blame you, right? Look at this. A survey has found that 59% of Scots would vote to remain. The referendum in 2014, was 55% remain, 45% leave. It's now become 59% remain and 41% leave because the SNP are insane. The survey also found that less than a third of people support Sturgeon's plan for a second referendum within the next 18 months. People don't want that. like nearly 3 out of 4 Scots are like, no, that's silly. But she's like, no, I don't believe it. And they don't really believe it. Nobody really believes it. You see, we know best, right? We fucking know best. And I tell you what, I can totally understand where the Scots are coming from here, because I'd be looking at that and going, right, okay, so it's either the ignorance and apathy of Westminster being governed by a bunch of elite English twats, or this. I think, well, I mean, in defense of the English, You can just see it, can't you? Just see some sort of Scottish guy, you come back from your haggis farm, and you sat there reading the paper, and the SNP are calling you bigots again, using your own tax money, thinking, do I want independence? If this is what it's like now, what do we do when there's no fetters put on them from Westminster, and they have full reign to do what they want? Do I want to be run by a bunch of Scottish-hating communists, or is it better to just stay with the English? And apparently, the majority of Scotland, a growing majority in Scotland, are like, yeah, fuck the SNP.
The Scottish independence movement is defined by progressive, inclusive internationalism.